go out to the same parties, the same social functions, passing information to each other. And so, if the anchor of a big time news show says, hey guys, guess what? Nancy Pelosi and her husband are insider trading, then they have to think about, oh, well, am I burning a bridge? Am I cutting off access to, information that she or her staff might be feeding me that I can break news on?
Tulsi Gabbard recently joined Joe Rogan for a conversation that immediately got people talking. This was not the usual polished political interview filled with safe answers and rehearsed lines. It felt direct, unscripted, and completely unfiltered. The discussion quickly turned intense, and the reaction online has only continued to grow since then.
You have to report it. You have to be transparent about it. Most of Congress has failed to do even that. So it did nothing to stop it. It says, you just got to tell us. And most people are like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you anyway.
And there's no repercussions?
And there's well, they might get like a $100 fine.
She walked into that studio and started speaking. And once she got going, she did not hold anything back. One by one, she laid out claims about Democratic Party politics that many people rarely hear discussed so openly. By the end of it, Rogan looked genuinely caught off guard, not putting on a reaction, but honestly surprised by how direct the conversation became. What Gabbard shared came across as detailed, specific, and hard to ignore. And after hearing it all, a lot of viewers were left wondering how anyone could look at the current system and not at least question whether serious changes are needed. This was not the kind of interview that slowly builds over time. It hit fast and hard from the start. Buckle up, because this conversation definitely leaves an impression.
It's a complicated union.
Yeah, it is. It is that.
It really is. Between money and politics. And it's just like, it would be wonderful if we could get money entirely out of politics. If the only way that a politician could make money while they're in office is just their salary.
Rogan opens the conversation by jumping straight into a topic most political interviews usually avoid completely: the money and power behind public office. He makes his view very clear. Politicians should live on their government salary and nothing more. No special investment opportunities, no backdoor deals tied to insider access, and no massive personal wealth growing while ordinary people are struggling to get by. He says the problem is not random or accidental. In his eyes, the system was built this way from the start, and it is working exactly the way it was designed to work. From there, Rogan shifts directly into the Nancy Pelosi stock trading controversy, the one that recently exploded online and drew a very interesting level of media coverage. That is when Tulsi Gabbard steps in, and what she adds to the discussion completely changes the tone in the room.
I'm sure you're aware of the Nancy Pelosi stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
It's wild.
It is. And look, I think this is one of the good things about social media is, of course, the mainstream corporate media is hardly covering it at all.
Gabbard does not waste time warming up the conversation. She goes straight to what she sees as the heart of the issue: the huge difference in how the media chooses which political scandals deserve nonstop attention and which ones quickly fade away. The comparison she makes is hard to miss. When accusations surrounded Donald Trump, news coverage went into overdrive. There were nonstop headlines, endless panels of experts, emotional commentary, detailed legal discussions, and constant updates every single day. But when serious questions were raised about Nancy Pelosi's stock trades and their possible connection to her position in government, much of that same media attention suddenly disappeared. The outlets that once covered every detail around the clock seemed far less interested this time. Gabbard called out that double standard directly, clearly, and without holding back. And the reaction in the room was instant.
Paul Pelosi is doing these trades within this period of time of Nancy Pelosi voting on this bill or bringing a bill to the floor, because we've got to remember, Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, nothing happens without her knowing about it or giving her stamp of approval.
According to Gabbard, very little moved through Congress during Nancy Pelosi's time in leadership without her knowing about it. Bills that advanced, bills that stalled, and bills that quietly disappeared all passed through a system she had major influence over. She knew what legislation was coming, when it was coming, and what kind of financial opportunities could come with that timing. During the same period, Paul Pelosi's investment trades repeatedly drew attention because of how closely they seemed to line up with major government actions and policy decisions connected to Congress. Critics argue that the pattern looks far too consistent to simply brush off as luck or sharp instincts in the market. In their view, it reflects a system where political power and financial advantage become deeply connected behind the scenes. Gabbard's argument is that party leadership spent years protecting that system and benefiting from it, while ordinary voters were left feeling increasingly ignored by the people they elected to represent them.
You as a member of Congress or your spouse or your adult child should not be allowed to conduct insider trading on issues that Congress is dealing with, which really covers every issue under the spectrum. They can't pretend anymore that they haven't been doing it. And yet, even as Nancy Pelosi's like, okay, fine, we'll draft legislation. But Congress is about to take a break as they head into the general elections. And once again, she's refusing to bring the bill to the floor for a vote.
Where people start looking at it and say, oh, well, how much money have you made?
Yeah.
Like, why are you worth $200 million? That's crazy. You make $200,000 a year. You're worth $200 million. Like, what's going on?
Barack Obama comes into the discussion because, in Gabbard's framing, this pattern extends beyond just one political figure. When he entered the White House, his reported net worth was a little over $2 million, and over time, it grew into the tens of millions after leaving office, with supporters pointing to book deals and paid speaking engagements as the main reasons. A similar debate surrounds Nancy Pelosi, whose long career in Congress comes with a public salary of around $200,000 a year, while estimates of her family's wealth have reportedly reached into the hundreds of millions. Her office attributes this to long-term investing in financial decisions. What Gabbard highlights and what Rogan pushes on in the conversation is the larger question these figures raise about whether such wealth growth is purely the result of legitimate outside income and investing, or whether the structure of political power itself creates situations where access, timing, and influence raise deeper concerns that deserve closer public scrutiny.
You look at, like, Paul Pelosi's stock, like, what his record is, he's better than Warren Buffett and George Soros, who are like wizards.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys are the best, and he's better than them.
Yep.
But it's 100% insider trading. If you think about what they put Martha Stewart away in jail for.
Paul Pelosi's investment performance during Nancy Pelosi's time as Speaker is often described as consistently strong, and critics argue that in some cases it appeared to outperform even highly experienced professional investors. The official explanation points to personal financial skill and long-term investing strategy. But Gabbard's argument challenges people to consider a different factor: the value of proximity to legislative information that ordinary investors do not have access to. She raises the concern that some trades and their timing raise questions that are difficult for the public to ignore when they line up closely with major political developments. She also points to what she sees as uneven media attention, comparing it to past cases where similar financial controversies received far more sustained coverage. In the conversation with Rogan, the tone shifts as she lays this out directly, and his reaction reflects the weight of hearing those claims stated plainly in real time, rather than filtered through headlines or online debate.
She's not the only one, obviously.
No.
There are, and this is where, the quote-unquote uniparty in Washington has been blocking this kind of legislation from being passed because they're both benefiting from it. We had, I think, there were Republican and Democrat senators in the lead up towards COVID who knew about it, right, and started making different investments.
Here is where Gabbard's argument broadens beyond a single figure, because the idea that this is just about one powerful person doesn't hold up in her view. Pelosi, she suggests, is not an isolated case, but one of the most visible examples of a wider pattern involving multiple lawmakers. According to her, several senators and senior officials have faced similar concerns about trading or financial decisions made while having access to information the public does not have. She frames it less as a partisan issue and more as a structural one. In her view, the core problem isn't about one party or another, but about any public official who uses the advantage of their position for personal financial gain, instead of serving the people who put them there.
It's just crazy that it's legal.
Yeah.
It's really egregious, and it's shocking how complicit the mainstream media is in ignoring it. Like, do you think that there's some discussion, or is it just an understanding that you'll lose access to these people if you highlight this? Like, why are they not covering that?
It's like this chummy insiders club in Washington. And, a common term that's being used now is called permanent Washington, which really fits when you think about it, because it kind of encapsulates that whole swampy ecosystem.
Gabbard's point, as she lays it out, is that this kind of situation keeps happening because the media system meant to hold power accountable often ends up protecting it instead. In her view, this isn't just random oversight, but a pattern of choices that consistently favor certain political narratives. She points to the Hunter Biden laptop story as a key example, saying that major outlets were aware of it but initially dismissed or downplayed it, with some framing it as possible disinformation, before all the facts were clear. Supporters of those decisions argue it was cautious reporting during a sensitive election period, while critics see it as selective coverage that shaped public perception. From Gabbard's perspective, episodes like this help explain why trust in mainstream media has declined, because many people see a difference in how stories are treated depending on their political impact, raising concerns that information is being filtered through institutional bias rather than reported consistently.
They all go out to the same parties, the same social functions, passing information to each other. And so, if the anchor of a big time news show says, hey guys, guess what? Nancy Pelosi and her husband are insider trading, then they have to think about, oh, well, am I burning a bridge? Am I cutting off access to, information that she or her staff might be feeding me that I can break news on, and all this stuff. So, it's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And if you start pissing off certain people, then you get kicked out of the cool kids club.
The Pelosi story, in Gabbard's framing, did not get the level of sustained coverage some would expect, and she argues that this has less to do with newsworthiness and more to do with access. In Washington, senior political figures often serve as key sources for journalists, offering briefings, context, and behind-the-scenes information that helps shape reporting. That access can create a kind of dependence, where maintaining relationships influences how closely certain figures are scrutinized compared to others. From this view, coverage standards can become uneven depending on how valuable a politician is as a source. By contrast, figures like Trump operate outside that traditional access system and often communicate directly with the public, which changes the relationship with the press entirely. Gabbard's broader point is that this difference in incentives can shape how stories are covered, depending not just on their importance, but also on the media's relationship with the people involved.
This issue's come up before. It came up years ago. Congress said, okay, we're going to take action to stop insider trading and make sure that elected leaders aren't benefiting off of insider information. And so they passed the Stock Act, which did nothing. Essentially, it just said, okay, if you are going to, trade in stocks or buy or sell stocks, you have to report it. You have to be transparent about it. Most of Congress has failed to do even that. So it did nothing to stop it. It says, you just got to tell us. And most people are like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you anyway.
After taking in everything Gabbard laid out in the conversation, the feeling it leaves is not really about political victory or someone's downfall. It is more like a sense of delayed relief. The idea that accountability might finally be starting to catch up with behavior that has gone unchecked for a long time. For years, critics argue, parts of the political system have treated institutional power as something that can be used for personal benefit, to support allies, and to avoid scrutiny when questions are raised. Now, signs of pressure on that system are becoming more visible. The expectation moving forward is simple, that anyone in public office, regardless of party, title, or influence, is held to the same standard when it comes to using power, and that public accountability is applied consistently, without exceptions or protection based on relationships or position.